I pay homage with my body, speech, and mind, filled with devotion to all Buddhas without exception, those lion-like heroes of the past, present, and future who dwell in all worlds throughout the universe. With the power of these aspirations for excellent conduct, I bow before all victorious ones as they manifest to my mind, prostrating with as many bodies as there are atoms in the universe. I envision that there are countless Buddhas abiding on every atom in the universe, each surrounded by hosts of bodhisattvas, completely pervading the basic space of phenomena. With never-ending praises sung to an ocean of melodies, I extol the perfect qualities of all victorious ones who have arrived at a state of bliss. I offer to all these victorious ones sublime flowers, garlands, music, and balms, beautiful parasols, brilliant lamps, the purest incense, the finest clothes, and loveliest fragrances, vessels filled with sweet-scented powders, piled as high as the king of mountains, the finest, most exalted array of all excellent things. I offer these as well to all the Buddhas. With the power of my faith in excellent conduct and my devotion to the Buddhas, I pay homage and present them with vast, unsurpassable offerings. I confess each and every negative action of my body, speech, and mind that I have committed under the influence of desire, anger, and ignorance. I rejoice in the meritorious deeds of Buddhas throughout all directions, as well as bodhisattvas, pratyeka Buddhas, arhats beyond training, those still in training, and all beings. I request that those lamps of the world, the protectors who, free of attachment, have attained the enlightened state of Buddhahood, turn the wheel of the unsurpassable Dharma. I join my hands and beseech those who may wish to pass beyond all suffering to remain for as many eons as there are atoms in the universe in order to bring benefit and happiness to all beings. I dedicate whatever virtue I have accumulated through prostrating, offering, and confessing, through rejoicing, requesting, and supplicating, however slight this virtue may be, to the enlightenment of all. The earth is perfumed with flowers, adorned with adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, and the sun and moon. By my imagining and offering this as a Buddha realm, may all beings come to enjoy the pure realms. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. To fulfill the needs of all beings at their various levels of understanding, we request that you turn the wheel of Dharma, including the lesser and greater, common and extraordinary approaches. So we should give rise to the great mind of altruistic intention to liberate all suffering beings, liberate them and bring them to the path of their awakening. And in order to do so, then you are listening to the teachings on the path of the Bodhisattva. Give rise to that bodhicitta motivation as you listen to the teachings. We are going over the way of the Bodhisattva, the Bodhicharyavatara by Shantideva. And the entire text, which is basically Shantideva's essentialization, essentializing of all the sutras, particularly the Mahayana sutras of the Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings. And it can be approached as a even more essentialized. It can be brought into the four-line verse, the four verses of Supreme Bodhicitta is so very precious. Where it has not yet arisen, may it arise. Where it has arisen, may it not decline, but evermore grow and flourish. And as we mentioned, the first three chapters have to do with the excellence of bodhicitta, so very precious, the preciousness of bodhicitta, and how to give rise to bodhicitta, where it has not arisen yet, that is to say, in our mind. So the first three chapters are the practice of generosity, purification, and pledging oneself to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. And the following three chapters, fourth, fifth, sixth chapters, are how to, where bodhicitta has arisen, how to prevent it from deteriorating or declining. And of course that occurs through the rigorous training in mindfulness, carefulness, and introspection, as well as patience as a way to antidote anger, which for beginning practitioners, it's considered to be the big challenge for beginning practitioners. And of course the practice of carefulness, mindfulness, and introspection is the bodhisattva practice of the paramita of discipline, bodhisattva discipline, which is to train in avoiding negative actions, train in creating wholesome actions, and train in benefiting sentient beings. These are three progressive phases of bodhisattva discipline. Then, of course, the paramita of patience, and next comes the based on our practice of patience, then we are able to give rise to the fourth paramita of diligence. Diligence, or joyful endeavor, and Shantideva has presented in his verses here a pattern of first, after he defines diligence, which is defined as the joyful pursuit of virtue, or taking joy in virtue. This is paramita, this diligence here, the word is a virya paramita. Virya, which kind of has as a Sanskrit word for diligence. Also, virya has to do with vigor and virility. As a English derivative of the virya. And the first, how he's presenting this is first to remove or teach how to train in removing what is disadvantageous, what contradicts diligence. And then the second part of the chapter talks about how to develop what is conducive, how to train in diligence. And of course, when we say diligence, we are talking about, of course, bodhicitta, that kind of virtue. And at this point, we discussed already the three mental states, since diligence really has to do with our mental, it's a mental state. It may be carried out physically and verbally, but it's primarily, it has to do with the mental state of, that diligence has to do with the mental state of joyfulness. And so, of course, what's counterproductive to diligence is laziness, and he discusses three kinds of laziness, or he basically teaches how what to reflect on and contemplate in order to counteract the laziness, particularly this first laziness we discussed last time, which is well, technically it's called this yearning or desire for idleness, or basically it's our need, or this perceived need to always be entertained, which can be when we think we're too busy, that's called laziness. This kind of laziness. Just too busy. So as he discussed here, our priorities are quite skewed in what's actually beneficial and what's deleterious to even our own welfare. And so he presents a whole cycle of contemplations on particularly impermanence. So the next and that was the first 14 verses. So now we've come to the 15th verse, which is, what is it? There's two verses here that cover the topic of the second kind of laziness, which is an inclination towards what is actually negative, our inclination to unwholesomeness. And so in verse 15, he says, you turn your back upon the sacred Dharma, sacred doctrine, supreme joy and boundless source of bliss. Why delight in mere excitement and distractions that will cause you misery? So this has to do with our inclination for kind of indulging in our negative, of course negative here means, again, mental states that are acted out physically and verbally, but in other words, we indulge our kleshas, we indulge our afflictive mental states, our afflictive emotions. Instead of, here he says, turning your back upon the Dharma, on the sacred doctrine. And the doctrine, of course, is considered to be, or is proven to be, the source of boundless joy. Listening to the Dharma is how we become inspired and develop faith. Contemplating the Dharma is how we dispel distracting thoughts, and meditating on the Dharma is how we basically cause the wisdom to arise. And these are all joyful experiences. Listening, contemplating, and meditating, all are those activities that produce joy. Why delight in mere excitement and distractions that will cause you misery? In other words, here our inclination for unwholesomeness is to pointlessly chase after thoughts and emotions about the past, about the present, about the future. And delighting or becoming enthusiastic and excited about worldly concerns, particularly those worldliness that's counterproductive to the Dharma, which is the say the 10 non-virtuous actions. So then he says, then what should we enjoy if we're denied, or if chasing after excitement and negativity causes us suffering, then what should we enjoy? He says, don't be downcast, but marshal all your powers, make an effort, be the master of yourself, practice the equality of self and other, practice the exchange of self and other. So this is what we should do to antidote that inclination we have, and subsequently he'll be going into how to not be downcast, how not to be despondent, and then how to marshal our powers, and particularly here meaning the powers of the these antidotes that he'll also that were this is introducing what he will be talking about, these powers, these four counterproductive forces. And the effort here is engaging in mindfulness and introspection, and then be a master, gain mastery over your body, speech, and mind, meaning to adopt, to know and then to adopt positive, wholesome actions and mental states, and avoid negativity. So then through that becoming, you master, put yourself in charge of yourself. And then practice the equality of self and other. At the outset, for beginning bodhisattvas, the first kind of the beginning stage of developing bodhicitta is to equalize oneself with others. See yourself on equal footing with others. As training your mind in that, not just philosophically. And then on that basis, then it's with that, having taken that stance of equalizing yourself with others, then practice the exchange of self and others. And again, this particular practice, equalizing and exchanging, is what makes up a portion of the next chapter, the 8th chapter of meditation. But these are what we should enjoy. These are what we should strive joyfully and diligently in bodhicitta, by defeating or overcoming our downcast. He says, don't be downcast. And then train, what's always called, put on the armor of diligence. 17 has to do, this next verse here and the subsequent sections has to do with our this laziness that takes the form of self-deprecation, self-contempt, and and kind of a defeatist attitude. So defeatism. Some comment. Our commentator, Kimball Kunpel, he's put these together, and it just makes it. He just comments as these are as two, as one, self-deprecation and defeatism. I've seen other commentaries where they make the third and fourth form of laziness, but regardless, this is what he's going into next in verse 17. But but how could I become enlightened? Don't excuse yourself with such despondency. I'm too afflicted. My kleshas, my mental afflictions are too strong. I got too much attachment, too much, too anger, too always irritated. Always in a fog. Don't excuse yourself. Don't put yourself down with such self-criticism. The Buddha, who declares the truth, the Buddha only spoke the truth, has truly spoken and proclaimed. And then this next verse, 18, is a quote, actually, or Shantideva is pulling it from, I think it's from the same sutra that he's quoted before, this Questions of Subahu. He says here, bodhisattvas should train their mind by reflecting that if they bring forth the strength of perseverance, diligence, even bees and flies and gnats and grubs will gain supreme enlightenment, so hard to find. So we should learn that verse and reflect on it as a way to never allow diligence to weaken. The justification for that, of course, is that in the Mahayana view that all sentient beings, all infinite beings, all those who have a mind, have Buddha nature. And when they meet with the Buddha or the Bodhisattvas, they begin to progress in the succession of their lifetime, of their lives, and attain Buddhahood. So this seeds of that Buddha nature. If you think of that Buddha nature as a seed, even though that's just a metaphor or an example, and through the interdependence of encountering the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, then that seed is nourished and begins to sprout and progress towards Buddhahood. I say a metaphor or an example because a seed is, Buddha nature is all pervasive. Buddha nature pervades the mind of all infinite beings. So bodhisattvas should train in that way, by reflecting on that verse, and never let your diligence weaken. And of course, what the previous verse talks about is what we should be diligent in, right? So this we know. And subsequently, that will be further developed in the book, in this chapter. if we think of diligence as just being very enthusiastic and having great spirit and effort and enthusiasm, that's not exactly diligence, is it? Diligence includes the object. Diligence means in virtue. So 19, verse 19 says, "And if by birth and lineage of humankind I am able to distinguish good from ill and do not leave aside the bodhisattva deeds, why should I not attain the state of Buddhahood?" So again, reflect on how I'm a human being, which means I have a very sophisticated language that I can hear, I can speak in that my language has kind of very subtleties. It's not just, kind of noise that conveys hunger or thirst or fatigue or something. Well, we can be very subtle in our language skills, both in our speaking and hearing. And it corresponds to a kind of cognitive capacity that's unique to humans. And so we have that kind of as a working basis. Then on top of that, of course, then we have this, human life has the potential of Buddha nature, as we previously mentioned, and the freedom and advantages that make it a precious human existence, human birth, human body. And we can distinguish good from evil, we can understand through analysis, cause and effect. And if we don't succumb to despondency and stay on the Bodhisattva path, then why shouldn't we attain Buddhahood? That's who does attain Buddhahood, is someone like that. So check yourselves. We will attain Buddhahood because we've got all the raw material, we've got all the work, we've got the basis, we've got the working basis for it, and we also have the conditions for it. And if you do feel kind of weakened or despondent, then, as I said previously, if we begin our day regularly by taking the Bodhisattva vow, which it says when you take the Bodhisattva vow, one of the ways to then begin training your mind is to verbally and mentally take the Bodhisattva vow 4 times every day and 4 times at night, at least 4 times every day. And then if you use the 3rd chapter, if you go through the 2nd and 3rd chapters, particularly the 3rd chapter here is where the actual Bodhisattva vow is taken. Then, following that, you remember the verses that you might apply to counteract this kind of self-deprecating or this, what is it, defeatism. This, today my life has given fruit, this human state has now been well assumed. Today I take my birth in Buddha's line and have become the Buddha's child and heir in every way. Then I will undertake activities befitting such a rank, and I will do no act to mar or compromise this high and faultless lineage, and so on. This one is very, its purpose, like it even says there, is to feel joyful. Because it's not just a pledge or a promise that we've given to liberate sentient beings, but there has to have that joy to it. And so then, and as it says, it said how even if we're inconstant, and if we're inconsistent in our bodhisattva path and our bodhicitta practice, we'll still attain enlightenment and Buddhahood eventually, said. So these are reflections when you're feeling kind of down, worthless as a Dharma practitioner. Later, when you have too much pride and you think you've really accomplished something, then there's some other, then we go the other direction to bring you more sensible. But here it's about this laziness, and one very difficult and common laziness is this feeling like, why bother? I couldn't do it anyway. It's just stuff, that other people achieve in the past. They've done it in the past, and everyone. There's, I couldn't be what it takes. I don't have what it takes. So we need to really reflect on this often, to kind of cut off, cut off before that. Get used to this joyful commitment as a way of preventing that attitude from arising. And when it does arise, then you can defeat it, or what do you say, antidote it with similar. But also when you should also reflect on it often to prevent it. Why does Dharma work? Like, why would that work? And there's what's called this because of the law of contradiction. But two things can't occur simultaneously. This is, conventionally, two things can't occur simultaneously. It's always one, like if you turn the lights on in the dark, you turn the light on, whether it's a big spotlight or you strike a match, that light actually contradicts the darkness. It doesn't push the darkness out the window or under the door. It actually contradicts it. That's what that means, maybe. And so practicing virtue mentally, particularly mental virtue, like diligence also means looking for ways to practice virtue. Not just sort of coasting on your being a good person, kind of your inheritance, but actually making new virtue. That contradicts your storehouse of negative habits. Even if you're not experiencing those negative habits, it goes in and contradicts them. That's why His Holiness Dalai Lama said, virtue will always win because it corresponds to our nature. Non-virtue does not correspond to our nature. So it's always contradictable. You know? So this is, think of that when you're unwilling to get over your self-deprecation or your defeatism. Mm-hmm. Okay, but that I must give away my life and limbs alarms and frighten me, if so you say. And so then, okay, I'll become enlightened, but this bodhisattva path, like if you read the exploits of the bodhisattvas, like it's, like I say, this is a practice of generosity. You know, we give this a material generosity, generosity from protection, generosity, and generosity, you know, from generosity of protecting from fear, and generosity of the Dharma, giving the Dharma, being presenting a wholesome alternative. This kind of generosity. Then also the fourth generosity is the giving your body, limbs, eyes. This kind of generosity. That's the bodhisattva generosity after a certain point. And that might be too much to think of. Am I going to have to do that? You know. So he's addressing that in these next verses here because it's a concern. You know, if I have to give away my life and limbs in order to perfect generosity, which is the bodhisattva path, if generosity is to become a paramita, one of those transcendent givings is going to be giving my life, my arms and limbs. And here he says, your terror is misplaced. Because we're confused, you fail to see what's hard and what is easy. So because we're confused, basically this fundamental confusion about what's to be done and what's to be avoided, is we're always kind of vacillating and not sure of that, just because we're not enlightened. And we're not sure what is significant and what is insignificant as far as our actions go. And so in other words, we fail to see. We're afraid to see what's hard and what's easy. And he's saying here that being slightly discomforted, there's no need to be afraid of being discomforted, just uncomfortable. What we should fear is we should fear failing to generate bodhicitta. On the taking of refuge, fear becomes a driving force for taking refuge in the 3 jewels. At first, on the basic level of refuge is fear of the suffering of samsara. And we take refuge to avoid the suffering. We take refuge and engage in actions out of fear of the karma effect of negative actions causing us to go down instead of up and or out of samsara. So we take refuge. Dharma, and that it's a protection. It protects us from the fear of the suffering of the lower realms. And the Mahayana level, when we develop, there's a Mahayana taking refuge on the Mahayana level. We take refuge because, or we take refuge out of fear of being self-interested. We take refuge out of fear of losing altruistic or altruism. And even on the Vajrayana level, this is, of course, we're talking here sutras, but on the Vajrayana level, also fear, we take refuge out of a fear of falling into seeing things as not being intrinsically pure. So, fear then in Dharma practice is an integral part of our training, as we can see. It's not something to be to get over. It's something to use. What the problem is, we're not afraid of what would be called the meaning. We're not afraid of what's meaningless. We're afraid of what's meaningful. This is also in in the cosmology. This is called the fearless age. This is this age of fearlessness. And it's not because we're fearless. It's called that because people are fearful of the wrong things. And it has, kind of talking in these terms, that we don't know, we're not used to we're used to being afraid of suffering, but we're not afraid of the cause of suffering. Like in the previous chapter, when there was that story of the Buddha and the pretas, remember that? And the pretas, when they came, in the dedication teachings, where we have to have an object to dedicate to, and a virtue to dedicate, and then verbally accompany and mentally accompany the act of dedicating. And these pretas, they didn't want to show themselves because they're so ugly, but they wanted the merit dedicated to them. Buddha said, I'll dedicate the merit to you, but you have to be there. He said, why are you embarrassed now? Why are you embarrassed now because of the results of your actions, and you weren't embarrassed when you caused this preta result, that. So it's just you need to reorient what we're afraid of. Says we should fear thoughts. We should be afraid of thoughts that think that it's unnecessary to suffer for the sake of others. For myriads of ages, measureless, uncounted, your body has been cut, impaled, burned, torn for times past numbering. Yet none of this has brought you Buddhahood. I mean, we have suffered so much in the past, according to the teachings of karma and the samsara, the realms of experience. And all the suffering we've endured in the past, there's been no merit gained. It has been meaningless. The hardships suffered on the path to Buddhahood are limited in their extent, he says in 22. Meaning that, like, for instance, when the Buddha first gave rise to bodhicitta, then he practiced these teachings. He practiced the paramitas, brought them to perfection over the course of 3 kalpas, 3 eons, many, many years. You see, the text refers to the Mahayana path as one that spans 3 incalculable or 3 immeasurable eons. That's, of course, that makes no sense. 1 immeasurable eon would be enough, because there's no. How could there such be? That's a name of an eon. That's a name of a kalpa. It's not that kalpa is immeasurable, because then you couldn't have more than 1 or something like that. But it's the name of it's the name of a kalpa that has a certain span of years. It's in the. You can find out if you want. I don't remember. I used to know these things. But anyway, it's a long time, but it's still a limit. Buddhahood will be attained. So our suffering that we must undergo is not something we should be feel terrified about, because it has an end. The alternative is to suffer worse forever for no purpose. So think that way about what. Don't worry about it. That's it sounds a little offhand, but there is a distinction between that. The hardships suffered on the path to Buddhahood are limited in their extent. That's meaning that even in with the greater the diligence, then the shorter the time, right? Once you've once you've made that pledge, then it's really a question of time. It's a question of time. How long must I practice to attain Buddhahood? That's why the Buddha also taught, especially for these times, the teachings of the higher yanas of Vajrayana, Mahamudra, Mahasandhi, and so forth, where that time is shortened. Even for someone, say, like Yeshe Tsojal in our Tibetan historical lineage tradition, and Jetsun Milarepa, who in one lifetime purified karma and gathered the merit and wisdom to attain enlightenment in that lifetime. So there's, regardless of how we want to think about it, here the context is it ends. And so we should be diligent in engaging in what it takes. He says then, and likened to the pain of an incision made to cure the harms of inward ills. So like surgery, we almost every treatment that we have to take for a sickness is inconvenient. It's uncomfortable. Tastes bad or feels bad, or we have to vomit to get out something, and that's, all these, and then cutting and bleeding or cauterizing or all this stuff, surgery, sewing up wounds. If we could, I don't want to have it sewn up. It's too painful. The thought of a needle going in my skin, I can't bear it. Just let me bleed. This kind of thing. We go through those things. They're mild experiences, but we put up with them. I guess we'd say it's a comparatively lesser. Even in the old days, in the dramas we see, on the movies and things of people, biting a stick and drinking, cheap whiskey to relieve the pain, and they pour it on their wound, drink, just all that. And all our doctors cure disease by means of bitter remedies, like things are unpleasant, amputations, and so forth. Likewise, to destroy a vast amount of pain, which meaning here the sorrows and pain of the world, we should be patient with our little hurts. We should accept our minor discomforts in regards to our Dharma practice, in regards to remembering bodhicitta and then connecting with it and training in it. And yet the supreme healer, here meaning, of course, the Buddha, does not use like them, like the doctors with their knives and things, does not use like them these common remedies with ways of extreme tenderness. He soothes away intense and boundless sufferings. So with these, he has these with mildness and excellence remedies, like sit comfortably on a cushion, and just practice being mindful of your experience, like that. So all the 84,000 ways that the kleshas are experienced are all antidoted through these skillful means. And we think, well, practicing the generosity of giving our limbs, that doesn't sound gentle, does it? Sounds rather extreme. Even the Buddha Shakyamuni himself in his previous incarnation, gave his body to the hungry mother of tiger babies, tiger cubs, tigress, that's right, tigress, couldn't think of, who was emaciated and not even able to feed her little cubs. And he couldn't just stick his fist into her mouth, but he had to cut and then bleed and feed blood to her till all the blood gave, till she became stronger. Then cut a piece of flesh, small pieces, smaller, bigger and bigger pieces. And as the tiger got stronger and stronger, then the tiger finished the job. And he never, this was a bodhisattva act, and he never felt anything but the joyful diligence. His compassion was such. But here he says, to answer that hesitation we may have about, like, well, I'm not really, that sounds not very gentle to me. He says our guide, meaning again Buddha, instructs us to begin not with these kinds of acts, not with these harsh, extreme acts, but by giving vegetable greens or other little things, giving food, that later, step by step, the habit once acquired, we may be able to donate our very flesh. Even the Buddha taught how you give like an apple, or maybe even that's too valuable, like a brown-edged lettuce leaf, and give it to your left hand and say, I am giving this to you, my left hand, I'm giving this to you, and then I am giving this to, and then go up, maybe a penny or a dollar. I am giving this to you. So you're verbally associating and reinforcing that you're able to give that back and forth. Even then you give to your friend and say, okay, I'm going to practice giving, but give it back. I'm not ready yet to actually separate from it. So I am giving this to you. And then take, I am giving this to you. Then slowly, slowly, you progress to seeing your own body as being just like a brown leaf lettuce, that your own body is food to be given away. But there's no need to do that in the beginning. We may be able to donate our very flesh as if it was food, like a Bodhicharyavatara, and without hesitation or without holding back or calculating or strategizing. For when we, okay then 26. For when we truly feel our bodies are no different from the given herbs, from the food, in that same example, in other words, when we have the realization of the equalness of all phenomena, abide, the natural way of abiding of all phenomena is in a state of equalness. Pain, joy, space, material, material and space are equal. If we find ourselves in times or environments of plenty and destitution, equal. Like the Buddha Shakyamuni was born as a prince, had everything, you name it, he had it. Then he saw it's meaningless. Then at one time, he also was, during his training, he lived off of the, what do you call it, the fodder, like in a stall, the cattle stall, they'd throw out the hay and replace it with fresh hay. So it's just that he survived on fodder like that. And then practiced austerities for many, many, many years. But always saw it as equal. So when we get to that point, then what hardship can there be in giving up, relinquishing our very flesh? have no fear of pain, we have no fear of our kleshas. We don't think of our kleshas as being dreadful. Everything has become equal. And we're always without fear. That's the point where you practice these more giving your body flesh, like that. So that's our that kind of realization. I say it. One text talks about how half your body is getting a amazing massage with what is it, sandalwood powder, and you're getting and the other half is being cut and hacked, and to you it's the same. There's an equalness, that kind of transcendent realization of the absolute ultimate nature of all phenomena. Yeah. Then, unhesitatingly, fulfill the needs of sentient beings without any fear, without fearing doing too much, without fearing not doing enough, hoping that it's enough, hoping it's not too much, fear, hope and fear, no, nothing like that. And 27, then, so even then, even at that point, then, of course, the bodhisattva has to remain in samsara. And so that might not be, again, that's like before, that doesn't sound very promising. Even when I reach that state, I still have to stay in samsara with all of its struggles and all of its pain and suffering. But a bodhisattva is not stained by samsara. Like we said, there's a lotus that comes, it's rooted in the mud, but like a lotus, it's unstained or untouched by that. So it's the same, like the bodhisattva is not stained by samsara. This high level, 8th, 9th, 10th level bodhisattvas we're talking. When we completely give up negative actions, like the bodhisattva, where is completely given up negative actions and purified previous negative actions, then there's no physical pain. The body is comfortable. And through the realization of the wisdom, then mind is never sorrowful, never depressed, never troubled, it says. So then this next verse says here, sin has been abandoned, meaning negative actions. Thus there is no pain. Through having wisdom, there's no more sorrow. This kind of wisdom, particularly this wisdom of the realization of non-self, that all phenomena, animate, inanimate, are devoid of a self. This kind of understanding. For so it is that mind and body both are injured by false views and sinfulness. So for people like us, ordinary people, our body is troubling because of our karma, our negative actions, and our it says false views, meaning our self-clinging, which has given rise to false projections. False projections, and we're clinging to both the projection and the source, the wrong views, the self-clinging. Then that is what causes our mind to be troubled. So here he's talking body and mind. The Bodhisattva incarnates or is born in samsara. So he has a body and a mind. So, but has that kind of freedom. 28, the merit is the true cause of the body's ease. This is for bodhisattvas. Well, actually, it applies to us, but here he's speaking about how it is that we should not feel defeated or put off by the. In other words, it's we're still talking about antidoting laziness, this laziness of self-deprecation and defeatism, And here he's assuming correctly that we're like looking for wiggle room. I want to, I still want to have that I'm still worthless, basically, no matter. So here he's answering all these. We have nowhere to go pretty soon, So where are we? Merit is the true cause of the body's ease. So our physical well-being for the bodhisattva is thorough. Then, while happiness of mind is had through understanding, through learning the Dharma meaning, learning the truth as a path, the path towards truth, and reflecting on it, and coming to a certainty of a realization of the absolute nature, the complete absence of a self. It's a wisdom. It's not that you've discovered the self and then found some place where you can, you uproot it, and then you found some place where you can get rid of it at. There's some self-composting system where everybody throws their self into it when they discover it, and then that's enlightenment. It's wisdom is what, it's wisdom. It's kind of like waking up from a dream. Knowing, oh, phew, thank goodness that didn't happen. While happiness of mind is through understanding. What can sadden those who have compassion, what can sadden those who have compassion, who remain within samsara for the sake of beings? Okay, now he's talking bodhisattvas, who remain in samsara for the sake of beings. They are exempt from physical pain and mental distress. Wherever they go, there's no problem. They always are in a state of blissfulness, never downcast this way. For through their power of bodhicitta, former sins are totally consumed, and merit, ocean vast, is gathered in. It's therefore said that they excel the Shravakas. So, and he mentions here, if you remember in the first chapter, somewhere, first. Where is it? Just as by the fire that will destroy the world, great sins are surely and at once consumed by it. That this is bodhicitta. Bodhicitta purifying sins. So the bodhisattva, where are we? Through the power of bodhicitta, former sins are totally consumed. And then a little later he says, a great and unremitting stream, a strength of wholesome merit, even during sleep and inattention, rises equal to the vastness of the sky. So for bodhicitta, when you give rise to bodhicitta, you're accumulating merit even when you're sleeping or when you're not, when you're inattentive, as it says. It increases, like merit increases every moment with the presence of bodhicitta. And karma, negative actions, are purified with bodhicitta. Of course, as we know, then negative actions are the cause of suffering. And so if that cause is removed, then there is no suffering, which was Buddha's, Shakyamuni's real first message, was the truth of suffering. And the first teaching was that there's always going to be problems, suffering. Understand it. That's what he said, understand that. So that's a training to contemplate, observe, analyze, and come to a definitive understanding that life is suffering, dukkha, that life is problematic by nature or by definition. And then the second comment, the second teaching was that it has a cause. And his advice was, just like with suffering, his advice was to understand suffering. Here he's saying there's a cause of suffering, abandon it. And so bodhisattvas are following through with that teaching and eliminating the causes of suffering. So then where would suffering come from if there's no longer a cause? And of course the fundamental cause, of course, suffering is caused by, on a conventional cause and effect level or something, like it's impermanence, isn't it? Like things are impermanent, and that's really inconvenient. And why it's inconvenient is because we want, we cling. Okay, that's the cause. It seems like impermanence is the cause. It contributes. The real cause is mental, clinging to what basically can't be clung to. Ultimately, we could say it can't be clung to because it has no self-identity, as we mentioned above. But even on a conventional, on the superficial impermanent level, it can't be clung to. But the real fundamental cause that Buddha was saying to abandon was this clinging, this habit of mind to grasp. It either grasps, it reaches out and grasps objects or inner thoughts and emotions, or it grasps, like we use that term, like kind of in a way of using that term to mean kind of understanding, right? Did you grasp what I was saying? You know? So we grasp at things as being real, that kind of grasping. We think that things are real, really real. So this is the cause of suffering. Then merit is the cause of happiness. This is on the level of the path. And so by bodhicitta, then the cause of suffering is eradicated, and the happiness, the good fortune is arises. It's therefore said that they excel the Shravakas. Of course, the Shravakas means the Hinayana. I don't know what he's saying here, something. What might be Hinayana or the listeners. Shravakas means listeners, and they, as a path, they're striving towards becoming arhat, meaning trying to dry up their kleshas, that their kleshas are dried up. The metaphor for the Shravaka or for the Hinayana or Shravakayana is like the nirvana is like a candle that gets blown out, extinguished. So the Bodhisattva has this compassionate and much more all-pervasive kind of wisdom. And so, that's said to excel the Shravakas in antidoting negativity and excels in accumulating merit. Of course, merit as it accumulated, then the bodhisattvas, even beginning bodhisattvas, merit enables us to benefit others. And the bodhisattva's path excels in its, you progress faster towards enlightenment. Okay, then 30. Mounted on the horse of bodhicitta, which puts to flight all mournful weariness, what lucid person could be in despair, proceeding in this way from joy to joy? Okay, so then this is again talking about the effectiveness of bodhicitta to remove this despondent, discouraging attitude we have mentally, and the weariness, physical weariness of our body. So this bodhicitta, in other words, what lucid person, meaning whoever's practicing bodhicitta, that bodhicitta, in a manner of speaking, confers the ability to progress on the path. And the path itself leads to bliss, or the path, what do I say, blissful path, blissful goal. And that's the bodhisattva, bodhicitta. That's the bodhicitta is the turning point, or what that turns on is bodhicitta. Okay, then verse 31. The forces that secure the good of beings are aspiration, steadfastness, relinquishment, and joy. This verse is kind of a summary of the antidotes above. And here it's like when we are working for the good of others, then we're supported in that by this aspiration, which is which is really desire that's transformed through bodhicitta. And it antidotes this first laziness of yearning for idleness or pleasure, and then the steadfastness here has to do with this despondency, and relinquishment. Actually, relinquishment, that's a word, has to do with knowing when to let go. And it plays into the practices or the reflections here that were presented about an unwholesome, our tendency towards how easy it is to be negative, that kind of laziness. But it gives us the ability to let go, to desist. It's like realizing that an act is against your own best interest, realizing that actions are pointless. And it's an ability, or that your actions can never be fulfilled. And so this relinquishment or letting go, it's like quitting, knowing how to quit. And in this case, it's in negative actions. So these are the forces. These are what support. Basically, he's just summarizing the previous chapter, everything we've discussed. But he talks about these, and joy, which is the antidote to self-contempt. And all of these, steadfastness, relinquishment, and joy, they all arise on the basis of aspiration. Aspiration grows through fear of suffering and contemplation of the benefits to be attained. So this aspiration, again, the first section was, the lengthy first section was all different ways of approaching the training and reflecting on impermanence, basically, to antidote this the laziness of always wanting to be entertained. That's we mentioned here, just sitting and practicing mindfulness. That's the first thing you notice, is you just can't sit still. Physically, it's not physical, it's mental, because, why? Because we want to be entertained. Ego is used to being entertained. So as soon as we begin to threaten ego's need to be entertained, then we start twitching or falling asleep or some escape mechanism. So meditation, this meditation, speaking of basic meditation, then that's the first threat to meditating, or actually it's the first meditation experience, is the experience of realizing that you can't meditate. Sometimes it takes a while sometimes to realize that, but that is the first kind of meditative experience. Is anyway, I'm going a little bit far afield here. So aspiration is the root of the other three: steadfastness, resting, or relinquishment, and joy, on the one hand, and then contemplating the benefits to be attained. So that brings us to the end of the removing, what is it called? Removing conditions contrary to diligence. Removing what drains our vigor. Which is these three kinds of laziness. 3 or 4 kinds of laziness, okay? So then the rest of the next section in the text, Shantideva discusses, or it presents how to train, how to implement favorable conditions for diligence. How to reinforce our vigor. So we'll take that up next time. Okay. Okay. So we'll do closing prayers. I should. We have this, 10th chapter here. I hope, or not I hope, but if you could, it would be great if you recited that as a dedication, and especially according to the teachings, where the dedication also includes love and compassion, training in love and compassion for each one of those verses, then that you apply the four measurables to those verses. So it's a very practice of, what do you say? It's a practice unto itself. Okay. All the virtue of this practice and all that is gathered throughout the 3 times I dedicate to all beings without exception, so that they may attain Buddhahood. Following and emulating the omniscient and courageous Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra, I completely dedicate all virtue. Since dedicating merit is praised as supreme by victorious ones of the 3 times, I completely dedicate these roots of virtue for the sake of practicing excellent conduct. May the teachings of Lord Buddha, the only source of benefit and happiness, long remain in this world. May the lives of those who uphold these teachings be as stable as a victory banner. Supreme bodhicitta is so very precious. Where it has not yet arisen, may it arise. Where it has arisen, may it not decline, but evermore grow and flourish.